So first, let's talk about the types of preclinical animal studies that you may need to consider. There are two general categories of studies. The first is efficacy and the second is safety. It's possible you may need to collect some efficacy data in an animal model for FDA submission, but the bulk of studies that you'll be conducting are those that will be used to determine safety. Within the category of safety studies, there are two primary types of studies. The first are basic biocompatibility studies. These studies are used to determine whether or not your device is compatible with the human body in the way that it's intended to be used. The second type of safety study is a chronic study, and this is typically applicable for long-term or implanted devices. And you may, if you're using a non-invasive or a very short-term device, you may not have to conduct a chronic long-term animal study. But first, considering safety biocompatibility studies. These studies are spelled out pretty carefully in a standard document from the International Standard Organization, or ISO 10993. And on this slide, I'm showing you a snippet from a chart that's included in this standard 10993. You can see that the types of studies that will be required depend on your device characteristics, labeled on this chart as device category. And so the two primary considerations for device category are first, the type of body contact. In what way does this device contact the body? And secondly, the duration of that contact. So for instance, in the snippet that I've pulled out here, we're looking at implanted devices. And let's look at those that are contacting tissue and bone. For these devices, we can choose a duration. Let's say that this hypothetical device is a limited duration, so less than 24 hours. So that would bring us to the top row of this snippet of the chart. And there you can see in the columns are the types of biocompatibility studies that may be needed. For our hypothetical device, which is an implanted device that contacts tissue and bone for less than 24 hours, we would need to consider the cytotoxicity, sensitization, and irritation biocompatibility studies, and potentially also the acute systemic toxicity, depending on the device technological specifications. But you may need to consider more or fewer of these tests based on your body contact and duration. And so you'd use this chart to help you determine which test you need. The animal models that are conducted for these studies are typically fairly well described in this standard. So for your basic biocompatibility studies, you likely won't have too many choices to make about the type of animal models in which you'll be conducting these studies. Now, when you move into some of the chronic testing, which can include the chronic toxicity studies that are required for biocompatibility, and also chronic device use studies that may be additionally required by the FDA, that's where you'll need a little bit more information about which animal species to choose. So how do you make that determination? How do you know which animal model to choose for your chronic use studies? Well, there's a few sources of information that we can look at. I've listed some of them here. The first that on my list is FDA guidance documents and standards. The FDA generates guidance documents. They don't generate standards. Standards organizations do that, but the FDA chooses which standards they'd like to recognize, or in other words, which ones they would like you to follow when you're doing a testing for your device application. However, neither these guidance documents and standards, as you'll see, often do not provide species-specific instructions. Another source of information that you can look at is the FDA documentation for previously approved or cleared devices that are similar to your own. And in those documents, you may be able to find some information about the animal models that were used to conduct those studies. Finally, you can look to literature and see what else has been published in this space, or talking to scientists, engineers, and industry experts. So first, we'll consider what kind of information you can learn from standards documents. So we talked about the ISO 10993 for biocompatibility, but there are other standards documents that may be applicable to your specific device technology. So what I'm showing you here is a snapshot of the FDA Recognized Consensus Standards database. So this database lists all of the standards that FDA has chosen to recognize. So these are the ones that are going to be applicable, could be applicable to your device technology. Here I'm showing you a selection of these standards that I filtered for the neurology category, which is likely a category that will be relevant to many neurotechnology developers. And I've highlighted a specific standard. This one is ISO 14708-3, which is for implantable neurostimulators. So on the next slide, I'll show you what happens when you click the link to that standard. Here, the FDA has laid out all of the different previously approved product categories that have relied on this standard for their testing protocols. And you can see there are quite a number of implanted neurostimulators that have relied on this particular standard. And next to each of these categories, you can see a product code, which is an active link. If you click that, you can find specific examples of the device technologies that were approved under this product code. This can be a helpful source of information if you want to understand what the testing processes and what the animal model choice looked like for each of these specific individual devices. So to discuss some of the other resources, we'll move into the case studies. And I have chosen 3 neurotechnology device categories for us to explore in case studies. The first is retinal prostheses. And one reason that I chose retinal prostheses as a first case example is because the FDA has generated a guidance document that lays out some important considerations for animal testing for these device approvals. And they lay out specific efficacy studies that they want to see in animal models, including visually evoked potentials. And then on the safety side, they would like to see histological assessment of damage. However, as I mentioned before, this guidance document does not specify which species these tests should be conducted in. So another source of information that we can use to investigate retinal prostheses is to actually look at the summary documents for an approved device. This is the Argus 2 device from Second Sight. And if you, I provided the link to this summary statement in the last slide. If you follow that link, you could find a very long and detailed summary document that summarizes the testing that was conducted to allow the FDA to approve this device. And if you browse through here, you'll see that this company conducted tests in 30 canines. So there you have at least some hint of what might be a good animal model for a retinal prosthetic device. The next case study that we'll be looking at is brain-computer interface devices. This is specific to implanted brain-computer interface systems, so an invasive technology. And here the FDA has produced another guidance document that could be helpful, similar to the guidance document for retinal prostheses. This document lays out some acute and long-term tests that the FDA would like to see for providing approval for this technology, but again, does not specify a species to consider. So in the context of implanted chronic brain-computer interface devices, there are not yet any approved technologies that fall into this category. All of the devices are currently investigational. So clinical trials of these devices have received, presumably, investigational device exemptions from the FDA, otherwise known as IDEs. However, these IDEs, there is no public summary available. These are private documents. So we can't use that resource for investigational device technologies. Turning to literature, we'll see that many safety studies and efficacy studies are conducted in non-human primates for invasive brain-computer interface technology. However, I would like to point out that non-human primates are not required by the FDA for safety testing. And so if you are considering an animal model for brain-computer interface technology, just know that it's not a requirement to use a non-human primate model. So our third case study is spinal cord stimulators. And the reason I chose this particular case study is because spinal cord stimulators are one of the most widely used clinical implanted neurostimulation technologies. So there's a lot of literature to draw on. I've just looked at a subset, and what I've chosen to highlight is a recent FDA-approved spinal cord stimulation device. This was from the company Nevro, and if you look in the summary statement for this technology, you'll see that they performed their animal safety studies in goats. So that gives you a good hint that perhaps a goat might be a good animal model for spinal cord stimulation animal testing. However, if you look in recent literature, it becomes apparent that there may be other options. A recent Scientific Reports article showed that the epidural space in pigs is quite similar to that of humans, suggesting that pigs might also be a good animal model for spinal cord stimulation safety studies. So this example shows us that there may not be just one ideal choice for animal model studies. It's possible that there could be a multiple numbers of species that are appropriate for your studies, and you should probably determine which animal model to use based on the detailed technological specifications of your technology. Finally, the most important resource, truly, of all the ones that we've mentioned, is that it is critical to get feedback from the FDA on your selection of animal model, particularly if you don't have very similar devices that have already been approved or cleared for you to draw on. So using all the information you can gather, it's an ideal strategy to make your best guess about what's the best animal model to use, and then to run that by the FDA before you begin your animal investigations, because no one wants to run a set of chronic animal studies and then learn that for whatever reason that animal model is not deemed appropriate by the FDA. So getting that feedback early in the process is really important. So to review my presentation, there are multiple types of animal studies that are needed in the device development pathway. There could be efficacy studies, there certainly will be safety studies, and those safety studies can have address biocompatibility specifically, or maybe may also address other features of chronic safety. And the FDA doesn't dictate animal model choice, although they certainly may have an opinion or a perspective for your specific neurotechnology, and that's why it's really critical to get that feedback from the FDA. But to make your best guess about what an appropriate animal model would be, there are multiple sources that you can draw from, and that can be previously approved devices and looking at the animal models that they selected. That can be literature, or potentially you may be able to get important information from recognized consensus standard documents and FDA guidance documents. So the last slide of my presentation, I've linked all of the source material that I talked about in today's lecture. So please feel free to visit that and see for yourself the types of information that's provided. Thank you very much.